Well, thinking about kicking the bucket, a couple things you want to do before that happens. That's what this episode is. My bucket list. My name is Phil, and you are listening to The Lip. Okay, everyone. This is episode 191 of The Lip. It just makes me laugh to even think about it. 191 times I have sat in front of this phone that I'm using right now, recording an episode. Yeah, 191 times. That alone is a very interesting thought process. Now, 20 years ago, one of the things that would have been on my bucket list would have been to be a radio host. Well, in the age of podcasting, I have an opportunity to literally check that one off the bucket list. I've hosted this show, The Lip, for 191 episodes and counting. So, what else is on my list? I'm going to tell you throughout this episode. And hopefully, you will enjoy the ride that we're about to take. Just a little bit of slight insight on one of my bucket list things. Now, face it, bucket list items are usually things that are big dreams that we all have, things that we'd like to have. Now, my whole thought process behind dreams sometimes is, well, you wake up from dreams. You want to get yourself in reality, right? Turns out that the things that are on my bucket list are not too far out of reach. It's almost like you just got to stretch just a little bit further to get them, but they are very, very obtainable. Now, some people's bucket list may include making an excessive amount of money, perhaps doing some incredible athletic feat. Personally, I know a guy, and I've talked quite a bit about him, who has a huge bucket list item that I think would be, for me personally, with my injury history, completely impossible. That item would have to be doing an ultra marathon. I wouldn't even begin to think about it. Even at my best, at my youngest, I couldn't even consider it. Whereas my friend Patrick Houston, my man has trained for years. And it would be safe to say that Patrick Houston has probably run more in a week than I have in my entire life. Not gonna lie, when I did run, and I was pretty effective when I was much, much younger, I was a sprinter. Hard to think about it now, but yeah, I would do the 100, and then I grew into a shot putter. Where Patrick, boy, he is a distance runner, and not just any distance, ultra distance, long distances. For him to do 5 miles would be like me doing, what could I even use as an equivalent? 5 miles for him is probably like me walking up the stairs. It's just not that hard. But of course, that's what makes bucket lists so attainable for people who want to really reach out and grab them. And I think that in his case, that 100-mile race, man, he can do it. Also, the crazy one that what it comes down to where you do the biking and the swimming and running, all three, my goodness, he's going to be able to do that too, because he's got all the elements of the equation part of his training regimen. So it's just a matter of him being in the right place at the right time to pull it off. But most certainly, in my opinion, Mr. Patrick, the great owner of Zenith Transports, it's not going to be hard for you to pull off any type of marathon that you choose to do. On that note, I am ready to fill in the blanks on this lovely evening. What is the question for the blank that needs to be filled in? Well, the question would be, is it better to have a bucket list goal that is nearly impossible to achieve, or one that is just within your reach? And the only way that that blank can be filled in would be with a simple statement: both are great. Both are great. On one hand, the bucket list item that seems nearly impossible, let's say if you have a goal of just throwing it out there to be the president of the United States, that is a marginally attainable goal. Somebody's going to do it every 4 years. Now, the average person's probably not going to be in the position to do so, but it is something that is at some level attainable. If you do the right things and you're in the right place at the right time, it's possible. But would it be heartbreaking to not be able to achieve that goal? Sure, a little bit, but at the same time, what would be better? To have some goal that's right there, something that you know that you personally are going to be able to achieve. For example, after my torn bicep, which I am very happy to report after seeing my doctor this week as I record this episode on Martin Luther King's birthday. Happy Martin Luther King Day. A couple days ago on the 13th of January, 2025, I did go to my doctor and got some really good news where he released me from his care. I'm free and clear. He also told me that I am also released from physical therapy. In order to continue to strengthen my arm, I have to just do more of the therapy. But as far as the amount of motion that I have and the movement, it's right where it needs to be. And it's just a matter of breaking over the psychological barriers and just moving forward, and he'll be there if I need him. So, a very attainable goal for me would be to perform one preacher curl by my birthday. It seems like it could be near impossible, but you know what? It's really not that far fetched for me to be able to do. All I got to do is just work at it. I can get that one preacher curl done. So, truthfully, that's a very attainable goal. All I got to do is reach out and get it. Which would hurt more if you failed at it? Realistically, from my perspective, would it hurt me to not become president of the United States? Not so much. Would it be painful if I couldn't make that preacher girl by my birthday? Yeah, it would hurt probably a lot more than mentally. It would probably hurt physically if I couldn't do the preacher curl. Um, so that one would probably be a little bit more painful. But truthfully, the question of which is better, on difficult and nearly unattainable bucket list goal, or something that is just outside your fingertips, I think it would be harder and more difficult to mentally get over that one that's so close that you almost can get it. That's the way I feel about that. Now, I'm going to ring the bell and begin the main event here. I'm going to talk about this bucket list thing. Of course, bucket lists can be somewhat depressing, especially when you're, it's weird to say at my age, at 46, you definitely, let's face it, when you look at reality and you take a serious look at reality, it is no stretch of the imagination to know that little things, the average life expectancy of a black guy is somewhere in the 70s. Then you think about it from the perspective of my profession, and that makes it even a little bit more ugly. Turns out that the average expected life expectancy of a corrections officer is like 63. So, all these things combined, I look at the fact that I had a grandmother and grandfather who lived to 84. So, in theory, hopefully I can stretch that number a little bit farther, huh? But either way, 70 ish, 63, 84, 46 is more than half of either of those numbers. So it's real simple and safe to say that I probably, and that's just looking at it from the numbers perspective, I've probably got more on the back end. I probably got more that has already passed than is in the future. Not that I'm going to project myself to croak at 46 and 3 days, but it's just the fact that I've probably lived at least half my life by now. And if I did double my lifespan now, of course, that would put me at 92. That's a long time. So it's safe to say that I definitely have about half that life already been lived. So, of the things that I have done throughout my life, there's a few that I'd probably still want to do. And for me personally, those things are well within reason. And they're not really too hard to attain. It's just a matter of, I guess you could say, being at the right place at the right time, maybe. And some of that probably could have made this bucket list a little shorter once I get to the fun part. All these good bucket list things are fun anyway. So let's see where we're going to begin. Kind of heartbreaking. I'll go with this one because this is a bucket list item that can't be attained this year. Can't do it. I cannot do it. I've already exceeded the opportunity to complete this part of the bucket list. I would have had to have done it before last week, and that is to attend a 49ers game at home. Now, granted, I actually was able to go to a 49ers game here in Philadelphia in 2011, and I thought that was really, really cool. First football game I ever went to. Yeah, first football game I ever went to. First professional football game I ever went to. 49ers played the Eagles in 2011. Coach Harbaugh had coached those boys up real good, and they went from being one of the worst teams in the NFL to the best team in the NFC. They turned around real fast, and it was a tremendous performance that they put on in that game that I went to go see. Got to watch Hall of Famers like Patrick Willis and future Hall of Famer eventually, Frank Gore, a guy who's like third or fourth all time in rushing yards. I mean, dude's gonna be in the Hall of Fame, no doubt. Got to watch Alex Smith, of all guys, have his career just shine a little bit during that year. And a guy who is really good, and I don't know if he's going to ever enter the Hall of Fame, but boy, he made the big play at the end of the game. Michael Vick threw this pass, and Justin Smith, the Cowboy, knocked that pass down to end the game. Now, that was really cool being to see the 49ers win in Philadelphia in 2011. But what would be even cooler is to get to go to Santa Clara. Now, I missed the opportunity to go to Candlestick Park, where Joe Montana threw that touchdown pass um, to win the NFC Championship that is known forever as the catch. I didn't get to see that end zone where Dwight Clark made that play. I didn't get to go to those hallowed halls where the 49ers won victory after victory on their way to winning 5 Super Bowls. But boy, Levi Stadium is a cool building and great sight lines out there in Santa Clara. It's an amazing, amazing place. And it has a little museum that has statues of players who've been there for 10 years. And that would be really cool to go through that and see it. Because, man, I missed an opportunity to go to Old Yankee Stadium, and I was right there. I would definitely want to think that I would put a very concerted effort to one day in the next couple of years, 10 years or so, put together a trip to go to Santa Clara and watch the 49ers play at home. Win, lose, or draw, it would be fun to see them play a home game. It would be one of the most cool things to get to do that one time in my life. That'd be neat. And you figure, I mean, it's just 3 things I'd have to get my hands on. 4, probably. I'd have to get a plane ticket, a rental car, a game ticket, and a hotel room. That be that. So eventually, that's something that could probably end up being in the works. As far as a bucket list item that I could scratch off, that one could work. Now here comes another one. Now I know I've said this several times to people that I know, and I actually mentioned it in a episode in the archives. What I would do if I won the lottery, and that is the 3 V's. Now, 2 of the 3 V's on the bucket list, they are not there. And I'm going to start with the Viper is not on my bucket list because I like the design. That's why I would buy one if I won the lottery. And the Vector M12 is on the bucket list because, well, everybody wants a Ferrari and a Lamborghini. And if I won the lottery, I would buy a Vector M12 specifically because it could. No other reason. I would just buy it because it could. And that wouldn't be on the bucket list. That thing costs more than my house. Wouldn't even think about buying that one again unless I won the lottery. And it would have to be one of those really, 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 really high lotteries too. However, the third V, that V is very, very obtainable. It's a vet, a Corvette, and more specifically, an exact Corvette. There is a model that I really like, that I really want, and it's highly attainable. Now, that model, that year, that area is in the 90s. I'm real keen on the 96 Corvette Coupe. Love that car. Now, over the last 20 years, I made a mental note of how much they were costing as I drove around and saw one here or there at a car dealership, and it was usually a used car dealership. Small, little independent car dealerships had them. Those 90 Corvettes would be there. These things, you could get yourself into one of them and you could fly down a road at kind of crazy speeds. These are the ones that had those hidden headlights that had to roll up and then they would come on. And when you turn them off, they would just shoot back down. I just like that design. I like the body type of those 90 Corvettes. But specifically, I can say that I've been in position to be able to get my hands on a Corvette a time or two. And as one of the legends of wrestling, Abdullah the Butcher, would say, when the time was right, I would be able to get my hands on that car. Turns out there were a few opportunities where I had the money to buy said car in cash over the last, let me see, 10, 15 years. I had two opportunities, two real opportunities. Like, not just real, but like real opportunities. Now, going back to Abdullah the Butcher's quote of, when the time is right, you see, the time wasn't quite right. And the vehicle wasn't quite right. Now, granted, it was the years that I was looking for. The first one was a 93, kind of close, not 96. It wasn't a Corvette Coupe, but it still had a 454. It still had that same basic design. It was very, very close to what I wanted. Now, before I go into why it was so close, I should probably explain the difference between the Corvette Coupe and the specific Corvette Coupe and just your run of the mill just Corvette. Now, some of you may have seen Corvettes out there that are just regularly just one color, or maybe have a racing stripe going on the front all the way down to the back. They could be special, neat looking cars, kind of neat, right? But The one that I'm specifically talking about has a very distinctive paint mark, and it's typically found on the driver's side, and it's just 3 lines. And that represents the Corvette Coupe, the special, the one that is just above and beyond. And it's only on those 3 little lines, just on one side. It's so subtle that most people don't even notice it unless you're really looking for it. And that's the specific one that I really want. So for me to see a regular Corvette and find that the number was such that it was at the time, that 93 that I looked at, it was within reason. And not within, when I say within reason, I mean, if I went to the place where it was, where I saw it in the paper, I could have driven off the lot with it. I had the means to buy the car. But, like I said, the timing was just not right. Fast forward a few years from that point, and I saw another dealership that had 3 Corvettes. 3 of them. Now, the one that I seen in that 93 version years before was red, and that was one of the colors that I thought would be a very acceptable color to me. I like red. Red would work. I could live with a red Corvette. Now, this other place that I had found had 3 Corvettes, 3 of them, and they were all in the 90s. And 2 of them, color wise, were unacceptable. Now, granted, you could just take it and paint it. But if it's a bucket list item, you want to kind of leave it off the lot and it be the one that you wanted, right? So 2 of them were really out. And boy, the one was white, and it just, no, it's just not what I was looking at. And then the other one was yellow. Yellow! And the yellow one had almost everything I wanted except for the fact that it was yellow. And I'm not a superstitious person, but the last vehicle that I had that was yellow was absolutely just what it sounded like. It was a big, juicy filled lemon Jeep. That was the biggest piece of junk that I had ever bought since any Ford that I'd ever owned. So, subconsciously, even though it had the 6 speed manual transmission that I wanted, it's yellow. And yellow just made me think of lemon, and lemon made me think of that Jeep, and I couldn't even think about buying that car. It wasn't even a thought. But then the other one, the white one, was also a stick, and that was cool, but it was white. And then they had a third one, which of course was the nail on the head color. It was black. It was the one color that I would think was just magnificent. But it was automatic. And don't get me wrong, automatic would work to be just as fast. But if I have a preference, the bucket list one would be the 6-speed manual black 96 Corvette Coupe. That would be the exact one I want. I would just be buying it just to be buying it in that situation. And well, thank you, Abdullah the Butcher. Wait until the time is right. And for those three, time wasn't right. But for sure, one day, someday, maybe, the time will be right and I will own a Corvette. Let's see. What else is on my list right here? One that only popped up in the last couple of months, actually, and I've been doing a little exploratory pacing to see if I could find some way to make this work. Now, granted, given some different circumstances, I may have hopped on this maybe a year or two ago, but it never really dawned on me. Never came up with the right name and never really thought about it in that way. But it's now become sort of a bucket list item, and that would be to create a LLC for my podcast, to make it my very own company, a media company that I could use specifically for this show. Got a name and everything in mind, and the name would be The Lip Media Productions. The Lip Media Productions. I felt that just has a good ring to it. And I think that every part of the idea was it just made sense because there were things that I wanted to do with the show. And one of those things was giveaways. Now, it doesn't make any sense for me to do a giveaway for the show, particularly with one of the items that I had wanted to give away. And I gotta tell you, it was one of the items from, yep, I'm gonna go back to the archives again. Um, One of the best things that I bought. It's a great buy. But it turns out that in the process of that great buy, I wanted to give it away on the show because I had bought it with the wrong one. It was a Cutco knife, part of my beautiful set that I have. And when I was in the process of ordering a few more knives, I kind of put myself on the spot because there was a kitchen knife that I already had, and there were two types of this kitchen knife. There was two different sizes. Now, I wasn't aware of which size I had at the time. There was either a 7-inch or a 9-inch. And I figured just from where I was when I was making the order, I'm like, because I didn't really pay attention how big it was. I said, well, it's the 7-inch that I need. I already have the 9. I was wrong. When it came and it showed up, look at that. I now have two 7-inch Cutco knives. Amazing, beautiful pieces of cutlery, really are. The one I already have in my block stayed in my block, and the other one I'm like, well, I don't need it. And I thought originally that maybe through the show I could have a giveaway, do a contest. And then it started to dawn on me that there is definitely some liability if I was to, say, take a razor sharp knife and give it away to someone listening to the show as a prize. And God forbid they cut themselves, they got injured when it arrived, it didn't arrive on time. There's all kinds of things I'm going to use the Marvel multiverse thing. I mean, there's a multiverse of things that can go wrong. And having myself covered by an LLC would be the best possible defense against any of those nightmares that could take place. And that's why I thought to myself, maybe putting together a media company for your podcast would be a great idea. And as a result, I started looking into it. And it turns out that it's one of those things that's within my reach. I just got to reach a little further. But I can go and I can get that. I can grab that. I can do it. Just need a little bit more time in order to pull it off, in order to do it right. There's no point in getting it wrong. Now, granted, that beautiful name that I love so much, the Lip Media Productions, in my mind, that's what I'm doing right now. This is a show brought to you by the Lip Media Productions. All of them are Lip Media Productions. But to make it official, I got to go through some steps to get the LLC. Now, granted, I like that name, and the beauty of it is I am not so rigid that if I lose that name, that I'm going to crumble up and get into the fetal position and not know what to do. I know what to do. Just come up with a different name. Good grief. Vince McMahon for his WWF/WWE didn't use that as his company's overall business name. I mean, heck, it was called Titan Sports. That's what the umbrella of the whole of what Vince McMahon's creation was all under something called Titan Sports. So why would I be so upset losing that when I could just come up with something else? It would just all work anyway, right? Right. But on my list would be creating that media company. Seems like the right thing to do, especially if I want to give away merchandise or do anything outside the norm for the show. It just would have to be that way in order to protect myself from any sort of liabilities. Just the way it's got to be done. If not, I could just simply just keep talking into the mic and doing it the way I'm doing it now. But you want to go onward and upward, right? Right. That's what I think. Now, the final piece of my bucket list, at least from what I can visualize right now, is one that would be so attainable. And the hurt piece of how attainable this bucket list item is, had I been paying better attention to what was going on, I would have already completed this part of the bucket list. It would have been done. Done. Whole bucket list would have been complete. But I fumbled the ball big time. And it was partially because, well, wasn't paying any attention. And I wasn't really thinking about it. And that bucket list item is WWE pay-per-view or premium live events, as they're called now. Big four. Now it's kind of five. Seems like Money in the Bank is kind of becoming one of those. But realistically, the four are on my bucket list more so than Money in the Bank itself. But the big four, which are the original, we'll start backwards. we'll go with the youngest and make our way forward to the newest one. And if I'm looking at it from the calendar dates, it would be that was the oldest going forward. Then it's you and the WrestleMania. We're back around, and then it's you. Technically, and then that. So the youngest of the big four events would be the Royal Rumble, ever so slightly, because the first Royal Rumble wasn't a pay per view or a premium live event. It was a big event, but it wasn't uh, a pay per view. And that was in '88. It was on live TV. It was USA Network. And it wasn't even the 30-man battle royal that it is today. It was only 20-man. And that's one of the big four. Then, of course, the next youngest was SummerSlam, which was also in '88, because the Royal Rumble was in January and SummerSlam was in August of '88. Then the next oldest, or I should say the second oldest, would be the Survivor Series, which was in November, specifically Thanksgiving of '87, would have been the first Survivor Series. And then the original WrestleMania was in '84, '85, and that is the biggest one, the granddaddy of them all, the showcase of the Immortals, WrestleMania. Now, going back to the archives, I did 2 whole shows on my experience at WrestleMania, night 1 and night 2, here in Philadelphia. Did that, loved every second. Now, that was the second of the big four that I got to. The first ever one that I went to was SummerSlam '97. First pay-per-view I went to, PLE of any type, for it was a big deal because SummerSlam, not 87, SummerSlam '97, because, boy, that had implications on the professional wrestling world that are still felt to this day. Turns out that SummerSlam is the one that Owen Hart tombstone piledrive Stone Cold Steve Austin, breaking his neck, injuring him to such an extent that it shortened his whole career. From that day forth, Stone Cold Steve Austin was never the same, and his career was never the same. So to actually have been there for that was pretty significant. So those are the 2 that I've already done. WrestleMania 40 and SummerSlam '97. Now, it turns out that here in Philadelphia, of all places, is where WrestleMania was, and it was here twice. Another time that I didn't notice before, but it didn't really matter because 40 was just bigger and better. And SummerSlam '97 was in my home state of New Jersey, in the old East Rutherford Continental Airlines Arena out there. Turns out that there was also a SummerSlam in 1990 where Ultimate Warrior and Rude fought each other inside the steel cage in Philadelphia, which is where my dropping the ball comes in. The other 2 events, the 2 that I have not been to yet, the Royal Rumble and the Survivor Series. My personal favorite event, I enjoyed the Survivor Series. It was my favorite when they did the classic Survivor Series matches where there was either 5 or 4 participants on a team and they wrestled and were eliminated until you got one team had all the members eliminated. And then, of course, the Royal Rumble was a 30-man battle royal and the main event. And just as it sounds, people get thrown over the top rope and onto the floor until there is a winner. I never went to either of those two events. They are the two that would complete my bucket list. And here's how I dropped the ball. During the years that I worked at Wawa, which happened to have been 99 till 2007, I really didn't really watch wrestling as much. I sort of took a hiatus for about from 99, watched a little bit, but not a whole lot. 97 was really about the end of my wrestling, watching it on a consistent basis for a while. And I didn't get back up into it again until a long time later. We're talking about a long time later. From 99 until about, seriously, 2015, I watched a Raw and a SmackDown, and then I shut it down again. And then 2016, the summer of 2016, I started watching it consistently again. So literally between 1999 and 2016, 17 years. That's a pretty big gap that I really wasn't paying attention to what was going on in professional wrestling. In other words, when I got WWE Network and Peacock, and I only did that in 2020 when everybody was pretty much hostages in their own house. I started watching a lot of wrestling in that time period because I hadn't watched a lot of wrestling during that time period. I had seen a lot of WWE and WCW prior to that, to 99 and back. And then I started watching the current stuff at the time, which would have been 2016, and wrapping around up until current day. So I started focusing on the era that I totally missed. And that would have been the Ruthless Aggression era. I missed almost all of it. So I had to rewatch all of that stuff. Like the guys who were champions during that era, I saw them when they were younger and they had not gotten to the heights that they had gotten to. And I did all that to say that during that time period, between 99 and 2016, the Royal Rumble was in Philadelphia twice between 99 and 2016. It was in Philadelphia in 2004 and in 2015. And the Survivor Series was in Philadelphia in 2006. 2006. Now let's face it, during 2006 and in 2004, I was just a kid who was just working at Wawa, saving up money to just do stupid stuff. Bought a lot of games, bought a lot of pizza. If I had been cognitive of watching wrestling and really paying attention to what was going on, I could very, very easily have put together enough money to have gotten a ticket to see the Royal Rumble in 2004 and the Survivor Series in 2006. And well before I started watching it again now in 2016, I would have already have done all of the big four events. Would have already done them. That's where I dropped the ball. I could have already have done this because all these events had already been here in Philadelphia, and I could have just really easily have gone and seen the Royal Rumble and the Survivor Series and actually have done all four events. But as a result, I didn't get to do that. And here comes another drop of the ball. 2018, the Royal Rumble was also back in Philadelphia, and I had an opportunity to make a decision on my 40-year birthday run of what I wanted to do, and I think that I chose very poorly. I picked the Royal Rumble Monday Night Raw, the Monday Night Raw after the Royal Rumble. Now, granted, I have a video of John Cena singing "Fly Eagles Fly," and that is priceless. And granted, I to hear him sing that was just fun. It really was. But hindsight being 2020, instead of being down two of the big four, I could have been down one if I bought a ticket to the Royal Rumble the day before. And it wasn't like it was a big deal or anything. That Royal Rumble didn't really matter. It was unimportant. Royal Rumble 2018 wasn't a big deal. Not a big deal at all. For all you wrestling fans, you know how little of importance that it was, the Royal Rumble 2018. Didn't matter, right? Of course, I'm saying that, and every single time I do, my heart hurts a little more because the 2018 Royal Rumble was hugely important. It was the first ever Royal Rumble that had two Rumble matches. The first one that had the women's match. That was a big deal. It was the first time Ronda Rousey entered the ring. Yeah. hmm I could have been that Royal Rumble. Yep. Could have been. Could have been. Could have been. Shinsuke Nakamura won the men's, and Asuka won the women's Royal Rumble, first ever one. But that's okay. We're just gonna suck those tears back in our eyes and know that, well, there will be another day that the Royal Rumble will maybe come back to Philadelphia because it seems to be a pretty popular spot. Although between the first and the second one there was 11 years. Then there was 3 years between the second and the third one. And the Survivor Series, well, that's going on about 20 years since that's been in Philadelphia. Yeah, I'm thinking that if I really want to do this, I might have to travel a little bit in order to get to the Rumble, in order to get to the Survivor Series. And especially now that they've decided that the SummerSlam is now going to be a two-night event, I can just envision very clearly that it would take a stretch of the imagination that the other two big four events, and maybe five if you want to call Money in the Bank, could very easily also end up being two-night events as well. And it just, I mean, those three events, Money in the Bank, the Royal Rumble, and the Survivor Series, they scream two-night event. Obviously, WrestleMania has just, it's the Showcase of the Immortals, the biggest show of the year. And it's in a stadium and they can just stuff it full of people. And the matches are big. Usually you're going to find one or two of those matches that are dream matches. SummerSlam can be the same thing. Dream matches. But the Royal Rumble, the Money in the Bank, and the Survivor Series are built, and I quote, are built for 2 night shows. And just to clarify where my reasoning is, well, very typically, the Royal Rumble match is the last match in the Royal Rumble. It's obvious, right? It's where the 30-man or woman battle royal goes about it. Now that there are two, it would make no stretch the imagination that maybe what you could do is have the two champions, the two men's champions, the undisputed world champion and the world heavyweight champion, have matches on night one and night two, and the world undisputed women's champion and the undisputed women's champion, night one and night two. And then you have the men's Royal Rumble main event, night one or night two, and the women's Royal Rumble main event, night one and night two. Split the two Rumbles, 2 different nights. Survivor Series, in recent years, they have been using the old WCW War Games. Here we go again. You could split the War Games matches up on 2 different nights. Have one, the women and the men on night one or night two. Have a couple traditional Survivor Series matches. I mean, these things are built for that. And obviously, the same would be pulling the Money in the Bank. You could divide the champions, let them wrestle on separate nights, and then the Money in the Bank match be the main event, or sneak it in early so that there's a potential for the cash in that night. It just works. It really does. And I would very much hope to be able to get to a Royal Rumble and a Survivor Series before they go ahead and do make it 2 nights, because I'm not going to lie to you, that WrestleMania was fun, but boy, it hit me over the head. Really, really did. And to try to do these other two on 2 nights as well, whew, that would hurt. But that's what I call it, a bucket list, isn't it? On that note, I'm going to ring the bell in the main event, and we're going to go into the football picks. Turns out that it's pretty obvious that I am a more NFC guy than an AFC guy, but I didn't do too bad overall. Keeping my head above water, I was 50%, 500, right where I wanted to be. Now, the playoffs are a little different than the regular season because you're talking about really the best. But let's just say I had picked in the wild card round the Chargers 24, the Texans 21, 32-12 Texans. Ravens, I expected them to fall to the Steelers 17-20. Ravens over the Steelers 28-14. Minnesota, I'm not going to lie to you, they were one of my sleeper teams to win it all. And they were beaten by the Rams, who I hate more than anything. Now, the thing that kills me is I expected the Vikings to score 27 and beat the Rams 27-20. Turns out the Rams, they scored 27, and the Vikings only on 9. Embarrassing. Sorry, Vikings. But here come the other ones, the ones that I was right about. Buffalo was going to defeat the Broncos. I said 35-14. They said 31-7 Bills. Eagles, Packers. It just seemed like the Packers were good, but they're not ready yet. Eagles 28 14 is what I saw it. What happened? 22-10 Eagles. And then the team that I really, really like to watch, and I have high hopes for them. They're my they're my ants here, and I think they're going to be able to move some rubber trees. It looks like they already moved one. And that's the Commanders. I picked them 21-17 over the Bucks, and wouldn't you know, nearly made my margin. They scored 23. Bucks only had 20. So 3 wins, 3 losses. And here comes the next round, the divisional round. Now, I see this one in the AFC, only the strong survive. That's the way I feel it. Only the strong will survive. Buffalo is going to do what they do, and the Ravens are going to do what they do. Ravens are going to clam up and fall apart against Buffalo. 35-21 is what I see. Texans, thanks for coming. Kansas City 27 and Texans 20. Now, these two teams I hate more than anything, the Eagles and the Rams. As a 49ers fan, I have a very unique take on this one. I very much want to see the Rams win this game. Why do I want to see the Rams win? Because I dislike the Rams so much that I want them to not lose in the divisional round. I want it to hurt so much more. I want them to lose in the NFC Championship game where they can see the Super Bowl. They can smell it. They can taste it. And then they get beat. That's what I'm looking for. I want the Eagles to go down, but I want the Rams to lose it even worse. I want them to see the Super Bowl. I want them to have that bucket list where they're going to win the Super Bowl, and it's like right there at their fingertips, and they just miss it. That's what I'm hoping for, and I want the Rams to beat the Eagles in a really close one, 28-24, so that the Eagles can be like, I can't believe we just lost. Speaking of a close one, I think that it could be a very fun game, and I'm looking for it because I think it's the one game that, personally, to me, if you're going to watch one of these playoff games, I think this is the one to watch. Just keep in mind, Jaden Daniels he's a really good player. I like to watch him. In fact, I took him as my secondary quarterback as I created a second team on Madden. I use him on the Browns, and he is so fun to use, and he's fun to watch in real life. And I think that the Lions are a very, very interesting team. And I would love to see this game. And I think that it could be a very close one. But I'm going to call the 1 seed is going to fall. I think the Lions don't have enough to beat the Commanders. I think that the X factor in that game is absolutely going to be Jaden Daniels. And he's going to be the difference. I like the Commanders over the Lions. You heard it here first. If it happens, let's just say I think that there's a real good chance if they can get past Detroit, the Commanders could be looking at their franchise's 4th Super Bowl. I'm saying it here. I'm saying it now. Just keep that in mind. Commanders over the Lions. Now it is time for the Spear of the Week. I think it's only fitting that the Spear of the Week would have to be, well, I'm going to call it an NFL team that just makes me sick. Spear of the Week has to be the Rams, the Los Angeles Rams. Their franchise just, ugh. As a 49ers fan, they are the bane of my existence. I know how the Philadelphia Eagles fans around here just hate the Cowboys. That's the team that they just can't stand more than any other team. Hate them. Cowboys are the absolute devil. Well, if I were to tell you that as a 49ers fan, that team is the Rams. It 100% is the Rams. And boy, it hurts so bad to know that the Rams' last Super Bowl win came because they defeated the 49ers in the NFC Championship after having been dominated through the regular season, and they win the one game that mattered most, the NFC Championship against the 49ers. So, like I said early on in the picks, I want the Rams to win against the Eagles just so they can fall in the NFC Championship game. I want to see them get speared by the Commanders and lose the opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. Spear of the week, the Rams. No question. Now it is time to start wrapping up the show. And we're going to start off by telling you the painting you see before you is one of what I call the color series. And this one is, well, just like all the other ones, had a very simple and obvious name. This one is blue. Took blue and made different shades of blue and came up with what you see in front of you right now. It's just that simple, but at the same time, it was a lot of fun to make. Now, you can catch me on Instagram at Philip Henderson 5102. I'm out there on X, Threads. I'm floating around there somewhere. But the most important thing I can tell you are these two things now. What I need you to do is subscribe to the at Phil the Lip here on YouTube, the channel that you're watching this show on right now. I need you to subscribe to at Phil the Lip and the Facebook channel. Join us, the Lip Facebook channel. Join us. There is always room for one more. And that's what I want you to do. Be that one more. Now, as far as it goes, words of wisdom for this week, not going to be my traditional words of wisdom. They're going to be more towards those NFL picks again. I think the words of wisdom that I can give you are these. If you don't get to watch but one game throughout all the playoffs this coming weekend, and remember, I'm recording this episode on January 15th, 2025. So this is Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. And the playoffs this weekend are going to be pretty good. And I think that if you're only going to watch one game, my words of wisdom would be watch the Commanders and Lions. If you've not watched either of these two teams play, I strongly recommend that you do, because my personal opinion is it's going to be the most fun game of the weekend. I'm going with the Commanders, but realistically, even if the Lions win, it's still going to be the most fun game, because I think the two teams have such talented players on offense, and there's some sleeper players on defense on both of those teams, particularly the Commanders. I think that that's a team that is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And if they don't win, they're still going to make it fun. But I think they're going to win. On that note, I just want to let you know my name is Phil, and you've just listened to The List.